Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now. We'd like to thank our sponsor, iZotope, the absolute leaders in intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. At iZotope.com, you'll find a plethora of tools and suites that will enhance your audio production, whether it's voice, video, podcast, or a full production recording session. Check out the industry-standard audio repair tool, RX11, or the multi-tool mixer plugin, Neutron 5, or the powerful Ozone 11 mastering suite, plus tons more. Go to iZotope.com and use the code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 to get 10% off at checkout. And again, the website is iZotope.com, IZOTOPE.com.
I would be perfectly happy, just being like I've thought about this before. I'm like, man, can't there be like a church of music where I could just like write music, record music, teach music, like study music, and like just have my basic needs covered?
What's happening? Thank you so much for tuning into Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for Thursday, April 24th. I'm very pleased and excited to welcome my good friend, Laena Myers, on the program today. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm recording this a couple days earlier on Earth Day. I hope everybody is having a good Earth Day. I mean, it feels a little silly, I think, with everything else going on in the world sometimes to think about our environment and, you know, what's in our power of stuff to do. But I spent an awesome day yesterday at this great native plant nursery here in northern Los Angeles County called the Theodore Payne Foundation. They're a great California native nursery, and it was really fun. Yeah, it's not too far from where we're at up in this part of Los Angeles, and just talking about plants and looking at plants and being around plants, and especially plants that are more suited for your area. You know, where they don't take, especially here in Southern California, where we're, basically a populated desert, always in conflict with the amount of water that's needed or wanted. But yeah, native plants, pretty fun. And it kind of hit me. I was like, oh yeah, it's Earth Day. This is cool. And what a fun way to just sort of think about something you can do in your area for some small change, literally in your backyard. Taking out invasive species, putting in native plants that don't use that much water, that bring in pollinators, all the good stuff there. I don't know, something to think about if you're in the Los Angeles area. Go up to the Theodore Payne Foundation. It's a good cause. It's a nonprofit, so you can write it off on your taxes if you're worried about that, or if you're figuring out your tax stuff for next year. Just buy lots of plants and write them all off. There you go. It's a charitable donation for the world, for the world charity, the Earth charity. Putting out some good environmental vibes out in the world while the political sort of dumpster fire rages on. I always try to ground myself and keep myself focused on what can I do? What's under my hands? What's under my feet that I can have some kind of positive impact? And at least there's something. The energy went towards something positive, versus just the catastrophizing and looking at the larger picture. And maybe it's, rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Maybe, I'm sure there's lots of cynical ways I can look at it myself. But I just have to believe that, somewhere today I put the energy in the right place, and it's got to come out somewhere in the balance. That's how I feel. And I don't think my guest Laena Myers would disagree. You can go find out more about Laena at her website, laenasounds.com. That's LAENA sounds.com. hyphenate.com. You can also follow her on the Instagram. Her tag or her handle, her scribe is Laena, Laena, and then a bunch of underlines. I think if you look up Laena Myers, Myers, you should find her there. You can book her to play violin on your record or do vocals on your record. I don't think she would mind me sharing this. After we recorded this interview a couple weeks ago, my wife was flying back from Florida for one of her cousin's kids' weddings. And she was on the same flight with Laena and a friend. I think Laena was playing violin in a band. I think they had just hired her, kind of was like a musician for hire on a cruise that left out of Miami or left out of Orlando area. And so it was funny. My wife ran into Laena at the airport and was like, "Oh my God, hey, what are you doing?" And she gave her a little rundown of the wild shenanigans of being on a band or being in a band on a cruise ship for several days. All the wackiness there. So, anyway, that being said, she's bookable. Go book Laena Myers for your record or for your venue. And you can also find her music on Bandcamp, laenamyers.bandcamp.com. And yeah, her website, Laena Sounds. So go do that. And before you do that, or while you're doing it, you can also listen to our conversation coming up now. Laena, thanks for coming on Hyphenate. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing, Randy? It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I don't know. It's been so long.
It has.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm good, just living the dream.
Awesome. Yeah, you have shows coming up, and I saw you just posted as 1 year
I do.
since the solo record came out. Is that right?
Yeah. I do have a show on Saturday night at Heavy Manners, but I'm kind of this is kind of the only LA show I'm doing for a bit because I'm like deep in the thick of working on the next album. So yeah.
Amazing. How is it going working on new songs?
Oh, it's so great, honestly. I mean, the album that I put out last year was kind of it was a lot of songs that had been with me for a long time. I had written a lot of them and even started recording them while my old band Feels was still very active and releasing albums and touring. So it was kind of like all the songs that I was writing along the way that just didn't fit with that band. And, just that maybe also I wasn't quite ready to share because they were a lot more like personal and just sort of my way of processing my experiences and emotions and stuff. But so, yeah, anyway, it felt good to get that out, but it also felt like it was a lot of sort of backlogged stuff. And so now it's really fun to be working on just all fresh material that is right now and right here, and it's really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's that cliche of like, the first record you have 20 years to write, and the second record you have 2 months to write.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I only had 2 months. That might light a little bit of a fire under my ass, but no, it was a really fun process, though, actually getting the song started for this album. I went out of town for 8 days and just stayed at a friend's house out in the desert, just me and my 2 little white fluffy dogs. And I just brought a bunch of recording equipment and all the instruments that I thought might be fun to mess around with, and just spent 6 full days recording just whatever ideas kind of came to mind and fleshing them out until it didn't feel fun anymore, and then moving on to the next thing, Yeah. And I basically came home with like 40 song ideas in various stages of completion. Some of them had lyrics, some of them didn't, but had vocal melodies, or some of them are like, oh, that one still needs a bridge or something. But I've boiled it down to like 21 that I'm like really excited about. So I'm kind of just like chipping away at this now, which is it's really fun, but it's it's hard to incorporate a creative practice in just like making a living in LA. So now I'm doing a thing where it's like one day a week. I'm like, this is an untouchable day where this is what I'm doing. So I wish that I could block out more. Like, I'm just going to go out of town for another month. I feel like I would probably come home with it done, but that's we do what we can with what we got. And I'm having my one sacred day per week to really work on it.
It's great. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like it's always changing too with our age and just our responsibilities and our things we have to get done in life, just the normal duty of living, but defending that creative space is so important, where it used to come so easily. You're just like, I don't know, I just had nothing to do today, so I wrote a song. And I'm going to play it on stage tonight. I got 10 shows next week, and I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Having upcoming shows is always like a good way to light the fire under your ass too, because you know what I mean. Like you're like, I'm gonna play a new song. I'm like, we're playing a new song on Saturday. So like after I get off of this, probably gonna work on it for like in a couple hours, and then I have rehearsal. It's gonna be like, all right, guys, this is what we got. Yeah. So. Oh my
God, that's amazing. Well, I'm curious, in the general sort of biographical interview format, where do you come from, and how did you first get started in the creative, sort of world of music?
Or
how do you talk about it?
My parents were very creatively inclined. My dad was a drummer in a lot of bands, but definitely some notable ones that people tend to ask me questions about.
I can stay away from it. I don't have to ask any questions.
It's cool. I mean, we could talk about it if you want. It's not like I'm ashamed or anything, but yeah, it's he played drums in Devo, so it's
a funny one too. Like, I can't imagine anybody asking about what my dad did when he was in his 20s and 30s, because I would have no idea. You know what I mean? My relationship to whatever my dad's career was at that time in his life, before I was even born, it was really like, I don't know, or when I was little, like, I don't know, he probably did something. Like, but most people would never have to really think about that. And I would imagine, like you just, like you said, you've been questioned about it, but if you put it on the terms of anybody else, like, put the shoe on the other foot for anyone else in the world, like, I don't know, I was supposed to talk about what my dad did. Like, I can talk about the person, I can talk about him in my relationship, I can talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, where we grew up, like life after those things. But for me to have a comment on my dad's career, like,
I mean, it's funny. Like, Fred Armisen is playing with them now, and for a while
as a drummer.
Yeah. And for a while he was, every time he was in LA, he was like, hey, let's meet up. I really want to like talk to you about your dad. And I was like, you know what? I'm good, actually.
That's on you, pal. Thanks.
That doesn't really sound like a great time to me, but no. And also, like, my dad didn't really he wasn't like a nostalgic, reminiscing kind of guy. He did play in a lot of really cool bands after that. When I was a kid growing up, just like weird experimental stuff and other singer-songwriters, but
that's
nothing,
cool.
My dad, to me, was an electrician who loved to play the drums.
Was he really an electrician?
Yeah, that was my dad's job.
That was really? My dad. Yeah, he was part of the union, IBEW, and worked on big construction projects.
That's amazing. I don't think my dad was ever part of the union, but yeah, I mean, like, even in the, like, at a certain point, my parents, weren't living together, and I would come spend summers with him, and I would just like go to work with him and be like drawing in the corner at someone's house where he was doing the electrical work. And you know what I mean?
That's so funny. Yeah. I did a lot of work with my dad. I would help like just pick up all the screws. I was the cleanup guy and like push the broom and clean up all the bits of like wired ends, when he strips off the wires or strips the wire parts.
I had
pick all that stuff up. Yep.
Those wire strippers, I called them the bird family because they look like birds, and I used to like play with them. And so I don't know. It's always funny to me because I'm like, what? I don't know. The first time I ever even realized that there was anything like weird special about him or anything was actually when I was like 16 and we went to Guitar Center to buy me my first electric guitar, and someone like approached him and asked him for an autograph, and I was like, why do you want an autograph from my dad?
That's so funny.
But my mom is an artist too. She immigrated to the US from Romania in her 20s and was just like a total rebel, had like a mohawk when I was born. And she started a band when I was 2 that practiced in our living room that my dad actually played drums in after he quit Devo. And yeah, so like I grew up like tiptoeing over instrument cables, and at one point I like destroyed an amp by like putting crayons into the input jack. Perfect. In the back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I kind of grew up in it. There's pictures of me when I was a kid playing guitar, and my mom says that she used to have me sing when I was out of eye shot, so she knew I was fine. And I don't know.
That's interesting.
But my mom is more of a visual artist, actually. Even so, she graduated from college when I was in middle school with a majored in art. So I don't know.
Is this all in LA? Or were you in Southern California doing all this stuff?
Me and my mom moved to Southern Oregon, a little town called Ashland that any touring musician is familiar with because they have a banging co-op. That's right off the 5. Yeah. No, we lived there for a while when I was a kid, like 7 years actually, but moved back right before I started high school. So I kind of just say I'm from LA But that
must have been a nice break, kind of a hippie town.
It was nice to be. Yeah, it was really nice to be like that age range and just being able to like run around in like the creek. And like when I moved back to LA, there definitely was like a whole like, oh whoa, I'm like still a little girl, and everyone here feels like they're like really grown up. Like all the girls were wearing makeup and trying to be sexy and stuff, and I was like, I'm playing Foursquare. You like you want a snow cone? Let's go get snow cones. So
that's so funny. It's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I have an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old now, and I again, like I'm putting the shoe on the other foot, like, you know what I mean? Like the kids, there's so many instruments around, and, and it's the thing. I think my wife, plays piano, and she's played in bands and keyboards and things. And, but it's the thing of like, we don't want to pressure them. Like, okay, you can find your own place, you know what I mean? But the instruments are here, we used to have a drum kit set up in the front room, and, and now it's all in the garage here. But it's like, they're there if you want to play it, but I don't want to pressure you. But at the same time, wouldn't it be cool if you did it? Wouldn't it be cool if you guys learned how to play music? And it's like, I don't know.
That's the way to do it, though.
Yeah.
Like my parents did never pressure me to do it, really. I actually started playing violin because it was offered in my elementary school. And it was like you had a choice between like having free time and being in the orchestra. And I picked the orchestra and started just purely through school and joined like a youth symphony. And then in order to be in the youth symphony, you had to be taking private lessons. And so then that's kind of really how, and then I ended up making friends with other people in the youth symphony. And so that like literally my parents had nothing to do with like, I want you to play violin or anything, so.
That's so cool. Yeah. Our oldest, we told him, he would have to take something. Like he could pick anything, but just, you got to pick something. I think that we have so much now, the pull of like the screens. It was different than when we were kids. There was, Nintendo and whatever was on, Saturday morning cartoons. It wasn't quite the 24-hour sort of like video game screen battle. So we just noticed that we were losing the screen battle a little bit. So we're like, okay, let's figure this. Let's build in some extracurricular activities because it's getting hard here by third grade. To sort of we're seeing how it was going as parents and the 2020s. So he took trombone. He picked the trombone because it looked like the biggest, loudest, like bazooka kind of thing.
Oh my God. I would have never thought of that, but I could see it.
But he's into the trombone and it's been fun. And he had a good teacher for that first year. And then the second year he didn't like the teacher, but I ended up buying him a trombone over the summer. It was the funnest thing for me. But he's like, Dad, can I get a trombone so I can practice over the summer? I was like, okay, don't let on how exciting this is. Like, but I went on, went on reverb real quickly. I was like, yeah, whatever, we'll see what happens. And I'm over there furiously, like couldn't whip out my credit card faster. Like he wants to buy an instrument. This is so exciting.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Aww. So we've done some stuff, but he's kind of fallen out of it. And we're like, that's cool. But now he's going into 6th grade. We'll see if he picks it back up. I think with the social stuff, if he sees his friends doing it and they get to go to cool places and play music at like Disneyland or go to weird colleges on trips, I think that might be the turning point.
Totally. Also, I don't know, I feel like besides like violin, like when I got it when I was in high school and I started having more like complicated feelings to that I didn't know how to deal with, I at that point really gravitated towards like guitar. Even though I was still playing violin through, symphony stuff, but like, then I was like, I want distortion.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm going to sit in my room alone and learn how to play like all these albums that I
That's
like.
amazing.
And,
I'm going to find a minor chord and put my hair in my face and
yeah,
back.
yeah. And like write really depressing poetry, and at one point I think I remember I made my best friend like just sit there while I performed like all of Live Through This by Hole for her.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? I was like,
yes, of course. Absolutely. It's amazing. Yeah. So I want to let you know, this is what's inside of me. I hope you enjoy this show. Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Meanwhile,
never mind.
Oh,
no, tell me.
I didn't really have friends who had similar music taste to me until like my senior year pretty much. But so this friend meanwhile, she was like listening to like Rob Thomas, Santana collab and shit. I was like, just bear with me for a second. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, I would definitely had a handful of friends I would torture, but mostly it was my mom. My parents were nice enough to buy me a 4-track when I was a freshman in high school. Wow. And so then that just took up my majority of my time at home.
That's amazing.
It was just recording stuff on 4-track, and then I would make a mix down real quick and then go show my mom, and she was like, "Oh, that's very discordant." I remember she liked using that word. I was like, "Okay, it sounds like Discord records. Okay, it's kind of Sonic Youth-y. That's it. Okay, I'm kind of in there. That's not a bad word. Not a bad word."
Totally.
But I had a friend come over once and she said my room looked like a Radio Shack had exploded because it was kind of I was just anything I could find. It was amps, guitars, keyboards, samplers,
cool.
records.
I mean, it makes sense.
Set it all up. Yeah.
Flash forward, here you are.
Yeah. 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 I don't know if you can see the room behind me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know. The room I'm in is also like, here we are. Here we are. Yeah. That's amazing. I didn't get my hands on recording equipment until later on, but I definitely was the loner. Just, kind of trying to figure out how to deal with my feelings, lots of complex feelings.
They come hard and fast. One thing just on the electrical side, did you ever build like a box with a light on it or like a buzzer or anything? No circuit building with your dad? Okay.
No. I think I was never that interested in it. He would have me help him like screw the outlet plates back on. But beyond that, I wasn't like, ooh, electricity, tell me more. Like,
did you ever get shocked as a kid? Or anything?
No.
Okay. I was a very curious kid. I think I was always putting my finger in things. So I think he must have taught me so that I would know how to stop shocking myself.
Right.
He made me very not afraid of electricity. I was always pulling stuff apart and he was helping me kind of put it back together a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was a shy, reserved child.
I knew just enough about electricity to get myself in trouble. I think just enough. Okay. It's like so I'd pull things apart and everything come back. But but that's it's interesting, from that, and then post high school. Is that when music sort of becomes more the thing? Is that the shy child leads to rock star?
Well, actually, I mean. So basically by senior year, I had kind of started meeting a few other people who liked music like that I did, like Sonic Youth and the Pixies and stuff like that, Velvet Underground. And Amy, who played in Feels, went to my high school too. And we actually, we became kind of closer once we both landed in detention for smoking cigarettes at school. And then we had a really wild summer after I graduated where we both kind of just like, I was in like a very kind of like dark nihilistic space in my life at that time and was definitely like abusing whatever drugs were available. And I can't speak for her, but, we started a band together, called Time to Kill. And Mike was a friend of hers already, and he was in that band. So literally like 3 of the members of Feels were in this band. And I was like 18 and just screaming, basically. But I had been a really shy person, and so like I would never suggest people, should take drugs because they're really bad for you, and especially now with the whole fentanyl thing and everything. But being a really shy person, I had kind of thought I would be like a closet musician for the rest of my life. And then that summer kind of was like, hey guys, actually I write all these songs, like we should start a band. I don't know. And but then after that, I kind of was like, you know what, I'm never gonna fuck with, or excuse me, I don't know if I
no, we can cuss. Oh yeah.
No, okay. Yeah. I'm never gonna fuck with like these drugs again. But like now I know that is something that I can do, and like I can just apply that. I know that exists in my brain, and you know what I mean? So
it wasn't the drugs that did it. It's you. It just again unlocked you, and now you can. It
just gave me a little bit of confidence for a second that I needed, and I'm sure I'm sure there are other ways to do that are much healthier. Like I had never heard of therapy or anything like that at that point. I'm sure there are way healthier ways to get there, but yeah. So we had this short-lived punk band. That I think was actually really good, but it only existed for that summer, and I basically, in lieu of going to college, like I did like a couple semesters, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and was kind of like focusing on as like a visual art practice. But my family didn't have money, and I just like had really low self-esteem and didn't think that I would be able to get any scholarships or anything, which is crazy because I was actually like a valedictorian in my high school. But so I just like started working at like vintage clothing stores and meeting other musicians that way. And then I started playing bass in bands. And then I started playing, I think the first band I ever toured with playing bass was Residual Egos with Adam Payne, who has a really great project now called Invisible Dog. And then I started playing with Devin Williams. I played with a busking band at one point. That really helped deal with my shy nature, actually, because the singer was like, he just asked me to play violin with him at a random show. And then he lived in Hollywood, and he was like, we started practicing at his place, and he was like, okay, we're actually going to go outside and practice. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. He was like, I have a bottle of brandy. I'm like, okay. So, then it was kind of, 1,000 people walk by who don't care about what you're doing. And you kind of like you're like, you know what? This is for me, actually. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, so that was definitely a formative space. But yeah, then I just started, I kind of, for a long time, I played bass in at least one band. And I played in multiple bands. I was just working at like different random clothing stores. And at one point I played in 5 bands and was just like working full time, and like would sleep in my car on my lunch breaks. And you know what I mean? Was just like, this was like
a dream.
Just, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maniac style. And then at a certain point, 2 different people had recommended me to play bass in this band called The Like. One of them being Jim Smith, and another being a coworker who had seen me play with a different band and was friends with them, and just gave them my phone number. And then they started texting me. And so then basically suddenly I was in this all girl, like sort of, major label powered, sort of like Motown 60s inspired band, and toured for like 2.5 years straight. And yeah, after that, I basically was like, okay, it's time for me to do my own thing. 'Cause I had been writing songs all this time and kind of just wondering when it was going to ever feel right for me to focus on that. And after doing that and really having to put that on the back burner for a while, I was like, okay, I'm going to freak out if I don't do this, So yeah, then I managed to assemble a crack team of weird musicians in LA, and
the who's who of heavy hitters.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird because I had been basically out of town for like 2.5 years, and then I had like a full album worth of songs that were already done and like fleshed out and everything. So I was kind of just like, who do I even know who, I actually started out with Mike, who had played drums in my young punk band, with Amy and stuff. And I think a friend of his playing bass, my boyfriend at the time. And there was one person who was playing keys and guitar and singing backing vocals, but then she like disappeared right before we were supposed to record some stuff and do like a small like Bay Area tour. And I found out it was because she'd gone to rehab and I had no idea. You know what I mean? It was like really, really messy. But that's how I met Shannon, actually, is because she had disappeared and my friend Stephanie worked with Shannon at a vintage clothing store. And my friend Stephanie had been like, there's this girl who just started working here who's like a really good guitar player. She sings and she plays keys. And I was like, really? So then I just went down to the store and like slid her a CD. It was like, call me if you want to. She was like, I'm down.
Let's go.
So anyways, that band went through a lot of trials and tribulations and lineup changes. At first, I really just wanted to like sing and run around like a crazy person. Because, playing instruments in other people's bands for a long time, I was just like itching to kind of, get out there. Yeah. But then it really settled down when Amy joined the band and I started playing guitar, and it became a 4-piece with me and Amy and Mike and Shannon. And then we changed the name to Feels. And then that
what was the name originally? What was it?
Well, so my name for a long time was Laena Geronimo because
of course. Yeah.
Because my mom was going to name me Geronimo if I had been born a boy.
Okay.
And I really, being this shy person, I was very like, I really liked the idea of kind of like harnessing that masculine energy a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like if there was like an alternate version of me that was male and I could like combine the two and just be this like hermaphroditic, just like powerhouse,
It's incredible.
And also, obviously, I mean, maybe not obviously, but I have like a really deep reverence for Native American culture. My parents were really good friends with a lot of Native people. And, it's at this point now, like I don't use that name anymore because I've learned that like it could be potentially offensive because I'm white, and but at the time it was like the utmost reverential choice, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that band was called Raw Geronimo because it was like Laena Geronimo, who had been in all these bands, but like the raw version of it, and kind of like a nod to like Iggy Pop and Raw Power. And that was kind of the energy that I really wanted to bring forth, was just kind of this like raw energy that was like bigger than anyone could really physically be, and just kind of, but also like really in touch with nature. And there was a lot of lyrics about, like harnessing the power of the earth and the sun and all of that stuff. So,
yeah.
but
yeah, there's a lot, but yeah. But I think history comes to bear on all of it, or the culture of the kind of stuff, and seeing where it goes.
Totally.
It Feels is a great name too.
Thanks.
So it's like,
we came up with that together too, because we were working on all these new songs, and we realized that our focus was really just like, how does this feel? Like, it feels good, if it doesn't feel right, or you know what I mean? Like that was, it wasn't about like, oh, what about that really cool, like technical, like chord change, or you know what I mean? It was just like, riff, does it feel good or not? Like that's all that matters. So after toying with a bunch of ideas and that one just sticking for a while, we were all like, all right, feels it is. And then, that band lasted a long time. Like, we did some cool stuff that I'm really proud of.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard putting bands together, especially when you're the one writing the songs. You know what I mean? There's the feeling of like, okay, is it just me solo? Is it me with the band? Is it this? You know what I mean? Those kind of things, especially at a young age. There's a lot of that kind of like wrestling with your own ego and then
Totally.
wrestling with everyone else's egos in the band and, you know,
It's
sort of front person. And, but I'm also trying to figure this thing out. You need those partnerships are so
totally
important at that early age.
And I really wanted it, like, even when, though I started the band being like, here's all these songs, you know, and definitely like was probably the main songwriter for the band. Like, I still am hesitant to fully say that because the goal was for it to become like a truly collaborative thing. And, I think we definitely achieved that at certain points. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely had like songs that Shannon had written that we were on both the albums we released. There was a song that Amy wrote, and there were some songs that we had written all together. And really just like, I just love camaraderie. I love like teamwork and like creating a little family, and I love balance and feeling like everyone is kind of like giving and taking, but it's really, you know, it's difficult. It's idealistic, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
the kind of utopian sort of idea of like a true democracy of things, which I think we always, you know, as a kid's like, oh, that's how bands work.
Yeah.
And then you read any biography or dig just a little bit under the surface and you see, oh no, there's always hopefully a benevolent dictator, if not,
right.
You know, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
And then there's the crazy one, and then there's the one keeping it all together. That's some of my favorite, you know, cultural digging is, you know, after having played in bands and played, you know, with bands and seeing the different stuff, and then you look at anybody, you're like, oh, okay, there starts to be those kind of like archetype sort of personalities in any band, and you becomes like a thing on tour. You can tell like, oh, okay, that's drummer energy, that's bass player energy,
right?
There's guitar, there's front person. You can sort of, you know, you can just feel it coming through.
I thought that because I had basically put myself through like a doctorate in band, you know, at that point, like playing in other people's bands and stuff, that I could avoid like the obvious pitfalls and stuff. But, you know,
the band energy comes for everyone.
Yeah.
No, I think, you know, it's funny. I mean, even now, you know, I'm in my 40s and playing with friends and doing projects and doing other things. And I love jamming. You know what I mean? I love playing in a band where it's a real, like, everyone's bringing their own ideas. I've tried doing stuff where it's like, okay, here's my ideas and you guys kind of support this thing. And it worked, but it wasn't as fulfilling as that, like, feeling like I want everyone to sort of feel like they're contributing. And I think I only know, like, well, then we got to call us a band. If everyone's bringing ideas in, I feel so sensitive to that kind of feeling, because this is a collaboration. Like, I don't want, you know, even doesn't matter who's singing or who's standing out in the front of the stage. It's if everyone's bringing ideas, we should just call this a thing and make it an equal partnership.
Yeah. And that was a big reason why we changed the name to Feels, because that was definitely the goal and what we were going for. And it was just like, build it and it will come kind of vibes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, like you said, like, it never quite achieved that. Although I will say that when Cole joined the band in like late 2019, then we all wrote an EP together that we released in 2021. Obviously the pandemic had happened at that point, so I think a lot of people don't even know that EP exists. But we wrote those songs just purely through jamming. Even lyrics, like, we got together and worked out lyrics together. And you know what I mean? So that it was funny because like the very final form of the band, like, did kind of achieve what the band had set out to do initially. So that was cool. But yeah, it had become clear at that point. I was definitely doing so much like back end work of just like, oh, someone has to be the one to like upload everything and register everything and blah, 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 and like that's literally my least
managerial like business of the music. That's hard.
It's my least favorite thing to do, like maybe in the world, one of them. And I was like, you know what? I don't know. We all were just kind of branching off into different life paths, sort of. And I was like, it felt right to me that like, people were going in different directions, because it was like, you know what, as hard as this is to admit to myself, like I definitely need to do that too. And I need to like, I'm putting so much energy. I need it to be going towards something that like directly reflects back to me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
as much as I like kind of like, was reluctant to do a solo thing because I love a band dynamic so much. Like it was like, I guess this is just like how it works these days. I think especially now,
things change too, and especially with where it's not really selling, you're not really selling music online. There's so little of a pie to split around. You know what I mean? So whether you call it a band or a solo thing, it's ultimately a lot of work for a little sort of payout. So you kind of have to find your like balance with how much effort goes in and how much comes back. Like you said, I think there's that reciprocation of it all is so important, especially in a time where there's so little kind of sort of space for art and artistry and the craft of it all. It just feels like great. Now you make the record to promote the live show, because that's really the only kind of financial back end there is on any kind of music is live music.
Or licensing if you're lucky enough to get that. I mean, it's a wild time.
Those are
to
such
be a
one-off
musician.
things, though. It's almost like you can't play for that. It's like it's sort of like a roulette wheel or a lottery sort of system. Like, hey, guess what? I won the lottery today. I got a song on a dumb thing, and you're like, okay. And then 10 years later, maybe it happens, or 2 days later, you never know when it's going to happen. You can't really work that side of the street, because every time, at least for me, like every time I've looked at like, okay, is there more to be done here? And it's like, no, we're good. I'm like, but you like that song? What about all these songs?
Right?
No, we're good. I'm like, okay.
I made a whole album of movie trailer cues. It was like commissioned for an entity called Eternal Music Group. And one of them got used.
Oh, that's cool.
But there's 15 more that might potentially get used someday. I don't know. Yeah. And that was fun though, because I really got into my production zone. You know what I mean? I was
it's so fun.
It's pretty fun. Like it was awesome working with them too, because there was a lot of feedback. Because that's not my background. So, they're like, okay, we need like 60 to 90 second cues, vocally driven, no lyrics. Everything else is up to you.
That's just a fun writing prompt. Like,
okay, I know.
Everybody, take that prompt and go out and create 100 songs.
I really tapped into my inner
with no lyrics. That's all vocals. Yeah.
I tapped into my inner like Kate Bush Bjork love, and was a lot of oohs and ahs and breaths and but also like builds and it's like they're supposed to be in like 3 phases and all this stuff. But so I don't know. Yeah, music it's a weird time to be a musician right now, because I think that it's weird. Like people at this point expect it to be free. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah.
And I was talking about this with my mom yesterday. I was like, it's like if all bakeries just gave away bread, like it takes like the people who are like, you know what, I really want to support this bakery. I'm going to buy the bread just because I want to support the bread. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, but like it's, you know what I mean?
No, it's absurd. I mean, I think we as artists, really got steamrolled into something that, was sold as progress or sold as the future or just an inevitability. It was that kind of feeling of like, well,
right.
You know what I mean? And I think because we're all so solitary creative geniuses on our own and never really work as a union or as this kind of larger sort of, there is no body of musicians. It's a collection of misfits and individualists.
Right.
That, you know what I mean? That's the perfect group to just fall for this mass sort of hysteria of things of like, well, one of you might get rich if everyone gives it away for free. And then we all just said, okay, here we go. And for better or worse, it's just
the thing too is just, with supply and demand, like musicians are going to make music no matter what, because it's just how we engage with our world. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not like, oh, you're not going to pay for my music, I'm making music. Like that's not how that works. You know what I mean?
Right.
like, I mean, to go back to the baker, like, of course, if people are like, I am paying for bread, they're like, well, I'm not going to make bread for you. I'll make bread from me and my family or something. But
Right, right.
um, yeah. So it's an interesting time. I definitely, for me, it's like I'm just kind of, yeah, like it's a spiritual path for me more than anything. You know what I mean? It's something that I do, and like because I love it and because it makes me feel like I have purpose in this world, but I would be perfectly happy, like, just being like I've thought about this before. I'm like, man, can't there be like a church of music where I could just like write music, record music, teach music, like study music, and like just have my basic needs covered.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's all I really want. Like I'm not trying to get rich. I don't even care about being famous or anything like that. I really just want to be able to do it and to put my heart in it and to explore more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Almost creating this type of like, yeah, I think like an academic sort of space or something, or like whether it's school or church or something of like a,
right.
If everybody just kicks in, donate what you can, here's all the things that are offered, and here's the faculty that can kind of live off of this sort of thing. I think that's the hardest part too, is really, the mainstream musicians will always be the mainstream, like big pop stars will always be big pop stars, and people that'll never get out of the garage will always be those bands. But there used to be this kind of middle class or sort of like strange sort of independent sort of culture of music that I think we were obviously influenced by, that, you could play 200 to 300 capacity venues and do that every 2 or 3 years and somehow make a living and pay your bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Drive a used car, live in a modest house, and, keep the lights on.
I mean, it wasn't
rich. Yeah. But
you're basically describing my life right now. But I mean, there's a lot of other hustling that goes into it too, but I feel very, very fortunate because I am currently able to sustain myself just off of music alone.
It's great.
I mean, it's between like violin stuff, and sometimes I do vocal session work, and then I work for a nonprofit that called Jail Guitar Doors USA, that actually Wayne Kramer from the MC5 started.
Yeah.
And we basically like facilitate music workshops in different spaces where that is not available to people.
And is that a nonprofit that runs off of donations? That's huge.
Donations and grants. We have a really great grant writer, and thankfully we live in California where there are people voting for cultural enrichment and stuff like that. But yeah, so most of what the organization does is go into like detention facilities and work with people who are experiencing incarceration right now. But I work sometimes I've worked in those spaces too. I've worked in elementary schools as well, though, like teaching kids how to make instruments out of like household objects and how to play them together and have fun doing that. But my most consistent work through them is working at a public park in East LA where they have like all the public parks have like these teen centers. Mm-hmm. And I've worked at a few different ones at this point, but they're run by some people who are really, really great, who really believe in the kids and in providing resources for them to do whatever it takes to, keep them off the streets from joining gangs and, just getting into trouble. So the idea is to like help inspire them to do other things before they make a horrible mistake and end up, in the system. So at this point, I've been teaching at this one park for a few years now, and they've actually set up an entire music room where we have a little recording studio. We've brought in drums, guitars, and actually I have 3 bands in there right now that are going to play at the Smell on May 31st.
What? That's huge.
I know. They're so excited too. It's really cool. So it's really neat to see that kind of come together. Because for a while we were in there, and there's kids who are doing hip hop, there's kids who are doing traditional Latin music, like Latino music. There's and then there's like two sort of like scream core punk bands, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's like, you know, and sometimes it'll be like, okay, like we've got this one band is practicing in this space, and we've got someone who's working on like their bars we have an ISO booth in there. Whoa. And then there's like kids working on acoustic guitar in the room next door, and we're just like running between like, you know, so that feels really good to be able to facilitate that. But yeah, so between that and the violin stuff, and that's pretty much, you know, I mean, I'm also thankful I've lived in the same place for a long time, so my rent has not gone up much. And yeah, my overhead's pretty low. I don't, you know, I ain't buying fancy things. I drive an old used car, you know what I mean?
Yep, like, that's what I'm saying. I think that was the biggest lesson I learned, you know, from getting out of college, and then, you know, really committing myself to playing music. Because rule number one, or lesson number one, was, you know, just live small, like learn to be happy living small. So I guess it's one thing to live small, but it's another thing to really train yourself. Like, you don't need much to be happy. I think that was the best way to sort of survive as an artist, or at least be able to really make a go of it as in the pursuit of art, was to really like find a place. It was internal work, you know, find that sort of place of satisfaction with not much, you know what I mean? Really enjoy the small things and sort of like get by on a budget that's tight. And whether that means sharing, you know, housing and having, you know, 5 roommates or 10 roommates or however many you need. And then, you know, just kind of living in the sort of space where, you know, you're getting by on, you know, not spending a lot. And not that necessarily, not that, you know, I mean, not that the money and the happiness were the same thing, but just there that level of comfortability of like, oh, cool, this is a very kind of bohemian type of get along. Like, this works for me, because if, you know, because I have these people crashed out in the living room, they're each paying $50, like, then that means I can, you know, I could play a few shows, you know, a month and pay the rent, but it doesn't mean you're going to have privacy. You know, you give up those little things. And then I think as time went on, I'm like, okay, I can afford to buy my privacy back now.
Right.
I don't need to have, you know, 10 roommates. I can get away with affording my own place. But it's those little things. But as a kid, it was great, because it was part of the social experiment of it all too, of just like being around people all the time and just having fun. And it was, the more people you're around, the more opportunities there came to meet more people, and you meet people that eventually could advance your career or sort of like grow that that village that it takes, you know, to sort of be part of something.
Totally. Well, and I think that it shows a certain dedication too, you know, like if I mean, I'll you know, I do still fantasize about like moving to a country where they subsidize your art and like you can just like make art exist.
I've heard of these places.
I've heard of these places too. Yeah. But I do think that it, in a way, the fact that, you know, they're really, it's almost like financially like stupid to become a musician, like really weeds out anyone who would be doing it for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Although like once you get into like the really big time, like pop world, I don't know if that really applies. But I do also, I think that, yeah, like I have a friend who's a really amazing visual artist, and this is an idea that she shared with me that I think about a lot. She's like, you know, as a creative person, you don't need to be able to buy things as much, because you are gifted with the ability to make what you need. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you can like be like, oh man, I really wish that I had like this beautiful shower curtain or something like that. Oh, but it's $200. But you're like, you know what? I have this creative mind. I can go down to the thrift store and find a big piece of fabric, and I can like fashion some kind of hooks or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's like, that's the blessing of being someone who's intensely creative, is that you can just look at the world around you and be resourceful and, you know, like find alternate ways to do things.
Well, I think that's part of the fun. I think exactly, like having the point of view, or having the, you know, that the disposition or the sort of the way you view the world, as a sort of playground or as like resource or as like, anything is up for grabs, and going into a thrift store or even just finding trash on the street and kind of go, cool, this is the artwork I need. Now I'm going to put a frame around this, or I'll just create this, or just pin this thing up on the wall. And there we go. Now that I've decorated, I've sort of, found an aesthetic. I think that was kind of how I lived for a lot of years. Like, these aesthetic choices are based on things you find and sort of how you curate your world and adorn it with things.
And it's sustainable. Like, we live in such a consumer culture, and it's really like not good for anyone. You know what I mean? Even if you can afford it, like, it's like, I was reading something that was saying that enough clothing exists on the planet right now to last like the next 15 generations or something. If we were talking about functionality, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like we've been conditioned to think that we need to buy things all the time. And that equates to like, treating yourself and like you deserve it and all this stuff. Yeah. But it's like, we're being sold a lie, like, like we actually have everything we need usually, and
of course.
So,
well, that's the thing, identifying needs and wants, what I mean? Those
totally.
types of questions. And I think, aren't often always asked, but if you're living in a kind of artist, efficient budget, or, in a place where you kind of have to make those decisions, you're like, I don't need any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I need it, especially touring. I think that was a big thing I took away, and I think sort of became part of my sort of, psychological architecture of like just surviving on very little. You need a couple t-shirts and some underwear and socks, and you're good. You can travel the world with a backpack and just figure out your life.
Totally. And like you want some like, it's like, look at super high-end fashion too. It's like you literally just make it. You just make it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like all these things that are, like, I don't know, when I worked before I started being a full-time musician, but I started out at vintage stores, but then I ended up in like super high-end retail because you get paid more as a I was always a cashier, and I'd be wearing things that I like bought at a thrift store, and then like, or things that I like painted on or whatever, and people would be like, oh, is that like Givenchy or something? And I'm like, no, bitch, I bought this for $3. And then I painted on it. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm blessed with a creative mind. Like, make decisions and feel confident about my decision, my creative choices. Yeah.
And you know what? You are too. We all are, just to like, you don't need someone else to tell you that something's cool. And I think that's what people pay for. You know what I mean? Like they pay for the seal of approval by someone who's deemed like, fashionable or whatever. And,
nothing screams, fashionable confidence like a band, rolling out of a van after being on the road for 3 months. It's all sweat and grime. The hair looks good. They're too skinny because they haven't eaten anything. Right. All the clothes are all just appropriately rumpled, and they get on stage with their guitars that are about to break and fall apart. You know what I mean? They're just like, yep.
Someone's wearing like a fisherman's hat, and
they found it at a parking lot at someone's house. They picked this thing up, and but that's that type of, you learn that, you feel that, or you just experience that enough, and you're like, oh, okay, this is how did we become the coolest people on earth? And it was just by like, getting by on nothing. Sleeping on the floor and everything. It works. There's a magic to that for a while that can kind of just carry you through life.
Totally.
You have to tap into it.
I will say, like, obviously there's a whole art and skill to like constructing clothing and making it so that it's, will last a long time, or is constructed really well, or all those things. But I feel like most of the time that's not actually what people are paying for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I've always kind of had a cynical eye towards fashion. I think just because I realized it just looks good on skinny people. That's the best thing you can do, is just be skinny. be in your 20s and be 20 pounds underweight, and everything looks good. I love that. Yeah. That's my favorite part of, living in LA long enough. It's like when you see good looking people that have to like do something to make themselves look more ugly just to be interesting, you just always see the kid with the shaved head. You're like, you're a model, and you just you're going to do something dumb to like, you're going to get a face tattoo or something just to like,
totally.
You're grasping at something resembling a personality or some kind of
or like
interesting
intentionally
thing.
Distressed stuff. You know what I mean? Like that to me was always like such an amazing sort of like trying to purchase authenticity type of vibe. You know what I mean?
I wish I had a thing where I would wear one pair of jeans on tour, like when we would tour a lot, and I would just have one pair of jeans, and they usually start out new, and by the end of 6 months, they looked very distressed.
You could have sold those for more.
I should have. We should. Maybe this is still a thing. I don't know if people still like this type of clothing style.
They do.
You know what I mean? Just buy new Levi's and send them out on the road with bands, and then at the end, you know what I mean? Just buy them off of them.
This sounds like a business model. I actually, I worked at a really fancy like department clothing store, and they would literally have employees wear jeans for like 6 months without washing them. Amazing. And then they would sell them for like $700 or something. You know what I mean? Wild. It was like, really, you're like,
same with like boots. I had a pair of Red Wings I bought new, and a bunch of like denim I bought new, and it was just easy because it was stuff that you could like live in you could live in. I was living it for 6 months, and I remember going to meet somebody for coffee in Venice, and like just looking at going to the store, on the Abbot Kinney, and like, whoa, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm screwed. This is like, it literally felt like a Crocodile Dundee moment. Like, oh right, yeah, this is be complimented just for being a dirt bag. Like, well, you look so cool. Like, no,
right.
I just have $10 in my pocket. I'm going to go buy a coffee. I'm not that cool. This was not purchased. I'm very broke actually at the moment.
Oh, you didn't play with it? I would always be like, yeah.
Yeah, no big deal. Oh, I got, it was definitely an 80s movie where I like told that story for so long. I was like, he thought I was cool. He doesn't know I'm not cool. I think I never had the confidence to play it off. I was always laughing at it.
You're like, yeah, these cost me $10,000, but you know what? No skin off my back. I make that hourly.
Yeah, no big whoop, whatever. I love that. And you can always, my wife is always so good at picking up on director energy. That's a very directory kind of thing. The guy that's usually too tall with very downplayed clothes, maybe a little like beat up hat,
right?
Kind of thing. It's like, oh, okay, this guy.
I think the fanciest store I ever worked at, like you could always tell like the richest people because they would be wearing like sweats.
Right. Yeah.
Like they'd be wearing like the least like, but like upon closer inspection, like really expensive sweats, sure, but like they just look like just comfort. They're just like,
it's a fine line between those guys and the guys, asking for change out in front of the smell.
Right. And they'd literally drop like $100,000 in like an hour on like a few things. And you're just like,
okay. Good luck.
Yeah.
You can afford it. Well, I think that's it, right? You can afford to be comfortable. And that's the trick of it all. It's like anybody can be comfortable. You don't you just wear your sweats anywhere you want. And just if you do it with confidence,
Hey man, ever since the pandemic, sweats life is it's acceptable these days.
Yeah, you can do it. You can live in your PJs.
Yeah.
Well, Laena, thank you so much for carving out the time. I know your time is valuable, and you got to get back to working on this record. But where do you encourage people to follow you to find out more about what you're doing, and how people do that?
I have an Instagram that I keep pretty updated. It's Laena with 8 underscores after that. So just Laena. And then I have a website that's just www.laenasounds.com, and that has that's got like a full on what do you call it? It's like a list of every album that has featured my playing on it, and it's pretty darn extensive at this point. And like sort of it's like a resume. It's like a resume, and I've got videos and all that kind of stuff. That one's kind of more violin work driven, but it has my own stuff on there too, so yeah, I'm not hard to find. It's, Laena Myers. I don't have any fancy legs, 212 handle or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Well, you should. Yeah. That's a good one too.
You're right.
You got to get that one unlocked now. Someone's got to take that fancy legs 212.
I mean, you know what? It's okay. They can have it.
It's up for grabs.
My name has always been hard enough for people to spell that I'm kind of like, let me just make it really simple, just that, so that, you
don't have to hide from it.
Yeah.
I've been hearing now from younger people, as being a father, being an oldie myself, that, it's like, whoa, how'd you get that Gmail? Is this like your name at Gmail, or how'd you get that like the social media handle? Or like, that's how old I am. I was there when I was there when I was the first one with my name to have it. I don't have to have any numbers underneath it. We're that generation old.
I mean,
you didn't need any numbers or letters after your name.
I'm so proud to have made it this far.
Yeah.
That's right. Every day is a gift, and I'm still here, and I'm stoked about that. I'm glad we got to talk about fashion.
Fashion and music and art and this utopian world. Yeah, no, it's always good. I've been having fun doing this podcast and just catching up with friends, and it feels like, it's a good way.
So what's happening with Rat Fist?
Oh my God, I wish there was more Rat Fist going on. That was a project that definitely ran its course. I tried as best as I could to keep that thing afloat, and it was the members were too slippery. There was too many members changes, and I just said, okay, I'm going to retire this, because again, I think in that sense of like, at some point the people that make the band are the band. It felt like I was writing everything, but I loved that band camaraderie of it.
Yeah,
we went through 3 or 4 different drummers. It started to become a Spinal Tap-esque thing,
right?
And then it just was like, okay, let's go ahead and retire that. That was the life that it deserved. It had.
Well, I look forward to hearing whatever you're working on now, and maybe you and Scott will do some more collabing. That was cool.
Right now, yeah. So I recruited Scotty into the Randy Randall ensemble, and then that was the band that I said, it just felt more like a band.
Right.
I didn't really have a particular opus of solo material and words and music that I needed to share. It was more just, it was born out of, I wanted to play a show at Permanent Records.
I was there. I was at that show.
Yeah. And then it said, no more solo noise things. You guys don't draw enough people. I was like, no, I have a band. I just lied and said I had a band. And I was like, it's called the Randy Randall Ensemble. Like he's like, okay, if it's a band, then you can play. So I had to create that band for that show. And so that was sort of why, so I quickly put it together and to have that. And then about a year into it, it just felt like, now this is an actual band. Now there's creative people with creative voices in here. Let's make this thing more interesting. So
do you have a name for it?
We've been working on it. It's been workshopped. Hopefully we'll have something to announce at some point. But I think it's one of those fun things of like just like being in a band, you got to think of the name, you got to have those long conversations.
That's hard these days. all the names have been taken. You got to add some numbers at the end.
Oh yeah, that's probably
to bring it back. That's where we're at now.
Yeah. We'll find something good. I've been a big fan of all the really boring names of like steering wheel or like seat cover or like couch pillow. I think those are fun band names. I have a constant list. I'm constantly I think it's become an in-joke with my wife and I too, of just like, ooh, that's a good smell band. Like I could see them playing.
I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see Couch Pillow 818 play.
There it is. That's it. That should be our band. We'll have to collaborate on that one. It'll be an improvisational duo. Let's do it. Couch Pillow 818.
I'm excited. Let's do that. Hell yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a great show at Heavy Manners. It's a super fun place. Yeah. All right. I'll see you.
Take care, Randy. Thanks. Great catching up.
Yes, there she is. Laena Myers. Laena, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure getting to chat and catch up and chew the fat, I think is a saying. How is that not a podcast? Just chewing the fat with Randy Randall, with somebody. It's a good title for a podcast. So go to laenasounds.com, LAENA sounds.com. Also go follow her on Instagram, Laena with a bunch of underscores. I forget, she knew the correct number when she said it. But LAENA. If you Google Laena Myers, MYERS, it'll come up there too. You can also go to her Bandcamp, laenamyers.bandcamp.com, LAENAMYERS.bandcamp.com. Thank you so much for coming on. And remember, Earth Day. Do something good for yourself, for the planet. Plant a native plant in your area if you have the room, the space, the ability to. Living with plants is fun, says Randy Randall. We've been springtime, at least here in this part of the hemisphere. We're doing lots of planting with the kids and having fun getting plants into the ground, into the soil. It's kind of a nice, fun grounding experience, literally getting your hands in the ground and just taking it easy, take it slow. Like we can't fix all of this fucking nightmare stuff all the time, every day. It's important to give yourself little moments to breathe and just feel good. Just feel good about what you have in your hands with the ground under your feet. All it can do, the shoes in the feet in your shoes. Feel good about all those things. All right. Until next time, have a good weekend. I will see you on Monday with Farley. Bye.
But that's we do what we can with what we got, and I'm having my one sacred day per week to really work on it.